All right, so I thought I would take a little bit of a detour from gear type stuff and actually get into some training things. And I thought the best place to start would be with dry fire. And I know that's maybe not the sexiest thing with in shooting, but it's probably one of the most important. Maybe short of mindset. Dry fire practice is pretty important, and so I thought that'd be a good place to start. Now, kind of give you some considerations, my opinions, and that kind of stuff on dry firing. And so, kind of kicking it off from there. Obviously, anytime that we handle firearms, safety is very important, and no different with dry fire. Just because you have an unloaded gun doesn't mean that you don't need to be safe. And in fact, you probably need to be, a little bit extra careful. And so, obviously, you need to fire the 4 firearm safety rules, and however you might term them are generally going to be: treat every gun as if it's loaded, never point a weapon at anything you not intend to shoot, keep your finger straight off the trigger until you're ready to fire, and know your target and what's beyond. So there could be some, you may have been taught some variation of that, but that should be pretty close. So we obviously want to follow and actually practice those safety rules. And in addition to that, one of the things that we want to do is conduct our dry fire in a room that doesn't have any live ammunition in it. And so, what you would do is get the gun you're going to dry fire, go into a room, unload it, clear it, and then you and your now empty gun leave that room minus the ammunition and go to a room that has no live ammunition in it. You have no live ammunition on your person, no live ammunition anywhere in the room. And then from there, an additional consideration, and this is kind of going back to the second safety rule, is we want to be pointing our weapon in a direction where if we do accidentally torch a round off, nobody's going to get killed. So probably not going to be able to avoid damaging property, but well, at least if you're practicing in your home, you're not going to avoid damaging property. But we want to have it so if we do have an accident, nobody's going to get hurt. Now, ideally, probably you're going to be in a basement dry firing against an exterior wall. So if a round does torch off, it's just going to go into the wall and hit some dirt. Now, if you don't have that, you're going to need to take a look around, figure out where in your home you can do that. Again, what we want to do is avoid dry firing against a wall where there could be somebody on the other side of it. All right, and you might also consider things like dedicated training guns. Maybe you have I don't know, maybe you're made of money and you have a whole bunch of guns that you don't use. Maybe one of those is your dry fire gun, and so you would leave that in your dry firing area. It never gets loaded with ammunition. It just stays in there. Ensure that gun's properly marked, and then you never load it. So that's a consideration there as well. You might also take a look at like the dedicated dry fire products that are out there, the CERT pistols and the CERT bolts for AR-15s. Take a look at those. Again, those are pretty expensive, but they are great training aids, and then it doesn't alleviate those 4 firearm safety rules, but it does make things a little bit safer. Okay, even CERT guns and that kind of stuff, you're still going to treat those like you would any other firearm, but that's consideration there as well. So, and then one of the other things that you want to do is get in the habit of actually vocalizing when you're beginning your dry fire practice and vocalizing when you end your dry fire practice. So, one, if there's anyone else in your house, they know that you're going to be dry firing, and 2, that's sort of a mental reminder to you that, okay, I've started, and that is easy, but it's a mental reminder to you that you're done practicing. That way you don't accidentally load your gun and go, one more time, and everyone's like, that won't happen to me. I think I would be shocked to find out how many times a year that happens, and probably 99% of the time nobody gets hurt, but we still don't want to do that. So get in that habit, actually vocalize when you start and when you stop your dry fire practice, and avoid that one more time type stuff. Okay, now kind of moving on, what can dry fire help us with? Well, first of all, it can help with your 7 fundamentals of marksmanship. So stance and posture, grip, trigger control, sight alignment, sight picture, breath control, and follow through. Dry fire practice is going to help you with all 7 of those things. Some other things are going to be your draw and presentation, and then if you've got dummy rounds or snap caps, you can work on reloads and malfunctions. And then you can also work on, you don't need snap caps or dummy rounds for this, but you can work on your low light, no light flashlight techniques. And so there are some techniques associated with that. If you know those, you can practice those by doing dry fire. And finally, disabled limb drills. So that's simply where you are doing your draw-on presentation, your malfunction clearance, your reloads, those kinds of things, using only one arm, one hand. And so, you know, obviously you want to get good at doing that with your primary hand, and then start doing it all with your support hand. So again, that's those are disabled limb drills. As far as like some training aids, I kind of mentioned the SIRT pistols. I mentioned dummy rounds and snap caps. And if you don't know what those are, that's a snap cap. It's just, you know, like, I don't know, cast aluminum or something like that. And there where the primer would be, that's just a piece of rubber or whatever in there so that your striker, firing pin or whatever has something to impact against. And the name is a little bit untrue. These don't make any sound when the firing pin or whatever hits them. They don't make any noise. It's just the brand name is Snap Cap. And then they make rifle as well. They make pistol rifle. I've got some shotgun ones, and they come in various calibers and that kind of thing. I think the pistol and rifle typically come in groups of 5. I don't know, they're 10, 15 bucks. Then you can also get dummy rounds. Those are a little bit different. They're, you know, molded plastic and that kind of thing, and basically serve the same purpose. Again, if you're going to do malfunctions and reloads, you're going to need something along those lines. If you're into reloading, you can make them yourself. Just make sure that you're marking them so they're not going to get confused with live ammunition, and you're storing them separate from live ammunition. That way you don't have any mistakes, okay? Let's see. Then we're on snap caps. Red dot sights and visible lasers. So visible laser would be something like Crimson Trace. You know, there's the IR visible laser combinations for rifles and those kinds of things. Those are very helpful as well, and they do kind of the same thing. So the idea would be you put your dot or your laser or whatever on a very refined aiming point, and when you press the trigger, depending on what that dot or laser does, is going to give you immediate feedback as to, are you anticipating recoil, you know, those kinds of things. So hold on a second. Thor, leave it. Sorry. So again, lasers and red dot sights are a great training tool. And then I mentioned the SIRT pistols and SIRT bolts. And then finally, don't be afraid to videotape yourself if you've got the ability to do that. You know, video's not going to lie. It'll give you immediate feedback. Moving on. So this is kind of getting into the how to dry fire. And this is typically the target that I use to dry fire on. Now, these colored dots with the numbers in them are 2-inch circles, and then obviously there's a silhouette there. And so generally I'll use the 2-inch circles for practicing my fundamentals, and then when I'm practicing malfunction clearance or reloads or whatever, I'll use the silhouette. Now if I'm going to practice my presentation and that kind of stuff, I'll kind of flip-flop between the two. Now with the kind of looking at the number 5 circle here, now one of the things I can do is subdivide this circle into even smaller aiming points. You know, maybe I put my front sight right along the top line of this 5 and you know, I get my sight picture and sight alignment right along the top line of this 5, and when I press the trigger, if I see it coming off that line, I know that I'm doing something wrong. Maybe it's just very, very minor anticipation recoil. I'm pushing the gun down a little bit, but those kinds of things are going to be very telling when you use a very small aiming point like that. Thor, leave it. How cool of a dog name is that? Thor, right? I didn't even come up with it. Anyways, so we talked about, this is the target that I generally use. If you're new to shooting, new to dry fire practice, or if you just want something different, you might consider a target like this. And this is sort of a self-diagnosing target. Now what you would do is you've got your white line here, and what you would do is you would build your sight alignment so that your sights are aligned on this white line. Okay, so your rear sight and your front sight, everything's aligned right here on this white line. And then when you press the trigger, for instance, if you see your sights come down this way, then you know that you're flinching, which is sorry, pull that up, then you know that you're flinching, anticipating recoil. Maybe you're looking over your sights or milking the grip with one or both hands, okay? And then bad info line is this guy's, you know, kind of brand name for, you know, you're doing something wrong with your sights up here. So, and then as you can see, if you're, you know, if you're pushing off to the right here, you know, you're failing to isolate your trigger finger, too much trigger finger, those kinds of things. And so depending on where your sights are going, you can kind of do some self-diagnosing there. And I'm sure you can find a target like that online, print it off, hang it up on the wall, back off, you know, 3 or 4 yards and do that. That would be a great way to start self-diagnosing things that you might be doing. Now, if you don't want to hang a target on the wall and maybe you're kind of overusing one of these, or maybe you don't need to use these, if you're an experienced shooter and that kind of stuff, then simply all you need is like a little piece of tape or something on the wall. Again, back off 3 or 4 yards, and you'll build your sight picture and your sight alignment on that very small piece of tape. So there are some suggestions for how to dry fire. Again, just what you're looking for is a small aiming point, a small target, and you want to be 3 or 4 yards away. You don't need to be across the room or anything like that. So, so there's that. Now, what I'll do is maybe just like a quick demonstration on a dry fire, I don't know, training session. So, what I've decided to do is work on my draw stroke and presentation. And so, you know, maybe you've got, this doesn't necessarily apply to new shooters, maybe you've got a new holster, a new gun holster combination or something like that, and you want to work on it. And so, you know, generally when we talk about a draw stroke presentation, that kind of stuff, what we want to have as little movement as possible, basically. And so, one, having less movement makes us faster, which is important in, you know, self-defense and that kind of stuff. And so we want to have very little movement. Some things that we want to avoid are, you know, they call it fishing. That's where you're kind of coming like this with not driving the gun out to where it's snapping down at the last second, but kind of you're actually moving your arm up and then down. We want to avoid that. There's it's called bowling, where you're coming up and kind of coming out. We want to avoid that. We want to kind of laser out there to the target. Now, there's a lot of different draw strokes out there, you know, I'll certainly admit that, and I'm just going to show you mine. And this is kind of a defensive draw stroke. Basically what I do is when I draw the gun, I come up, you know, to about my pec, and then from there, if I needed to do some like shooting from retention or something like that, I can do that from there. Or if I'm going to continue to punch out to a traditional shooting stance, I can do that as well. So again, what you'll see, hopefully, is very little movement across my shoulders. You're not going to see me leaning and that kind of stuff. And again, I'll come up and then I should be lasering out, so to speak, where that once the muzzle comes up and is level, it's just going to laser out underneath my eye. You shouldn't see my head dipping down or anything like that. Again, I want to have as very little movement as possible, and I want to bring the gun up to my eye, not my eye down to the gun. All right? So we'll do a couple of those, and then that'll be kind of the end of the video. So the first one is going to be just a draw and presentation without going to the trigger, and then the second one I'll actually go to the trigger. So here's the first one. Probably ought to do this. So again, no ammunition on my person. I'm going to just, you know, sort of at this point quadruple check the gun. So visual physical inspection of the chamber and the magazine well. I'm going to do that twice, and yep, it's empty. We'll let the slide go and reholster. Now again, I've got my aiming point on the wall. I'm just going to work a couple of you know, draws and presentations. All right. That felt pretty good. Didn't quite laser out how I would have liked, but you know, just a little minor adjustment there at the end, but not bad. So on the second one, feel good. I'll go ahead and just go to the trigger on the second one. All right. So from there, that second one coming out of the holster was good. You heard me come up, went to the trigger, pressed the trigger, held the trigger to the rear, brought the gun back, racked the slide, And then when I press the gun back out, I let the trigger go to its reset. Now, not sure if you were going to be able to see it or not, but I didn't, they call it booger flicking. I didn't come off the trigger. I didn't let it come all the way out. I let it go to its reset, and then from there took my finger off. Now, when I brought the gun back out, unfortunately it didn't come back out to where I wanted it to. I had to do a little sight adjustment. So some things to work on there, and I will work on them. But there you go. That's basically dry firing. Just some things to work on. If there's some interest in that kind of stuff, what I'll do is I'll certainly do some additional videos and that kind of thing on some more specific dry fire stuff, and or whatever. Again, just whatever's in the comments, I'll feed off of it. If you have any suggestions, concerns, questions, whatever, throw them in the comments there. Again, I appreciate you guys taking the time to tune in. Thanks.